Welcome, bienvenue, welcome once again to another property podcast. Yes, this is the first of four this week. Property Matters being today, Ipsa Kind of Magic tomorrow, and then Property Quorum, the good old bun fight on Thursday, and on Friday we have Cladding Matters, possibly our most watched show. But today, of course, we have, as ever, beside me, our Lord and Master, Hamish McClay of Search Convey, who helped set this up in the first place. But I'm very pleased to bring to the show Tiffany Fairbrother of All Sorts of Hats, who herself has lived through some of this. We'll talk more in detail. And Allie Fenton, herself a tenant, who's going to tell us a horrendous story, and with some pictorial information as well. Today's topic is, in fact, all about really the aspects of renting and housing standards. It's called From Concern to Action. And of course, to start us off, Hamish McClay.
Well, strangely, it's not a totally different subject to that which we'll be speaking about on Friday, because on Friday we speak too of the situation to do with cladding that is happening in sort of Greenwich, where the council are making life very, very difficult for residents there by deciding that standards which that are meant to be adhered to are not being adhered to. And because of that, the remediation being carried out there, which is substandard, which makes the clients worse off. A slightly different sort of situation does exist, though, throughout the property sector. And one of the big challenges, we've just had this new act coming relative to renters' rights, and it is meant to be sort of clearing things up. However, regulation is meant to protect. It's meant to protect the innocent, and sometimes it just doesn't do that at all. And we find sort of situations, and some of these, and it's very, very important to remember, is not just the conditions that people actually themselves have to live under and sort of live through. It's how it impacts on people as individuals, how it impacts on families, what it does to those families at the particular time. And some of them are quite serious. And of course, we're going to have a couple of examples here this morning where we want to actually sort of factor on standards should be adhered to. And sometimes it's not just the landlords that manage to sort of get away with it, but the people who are meant to be regulating it and looking after the situation, they get away with it as well.
Welcome to the show, Allie. I'm very pleased to have you here. Now, before we get into exactly what happened to you back in 2015, between 2015 and 2018, which is really when I really need to know how much this sort of thing can affect family life. You've got a kid, you have a home life, and living in substandard property can really have a negative effect on it, can it not?
It can. It can have a mental health effect. It can have like a social effect, because you don't want people to come around because of the state of the property. It really can impact you as a family as well as an individual.
All right, well, let's get some flesh on the bone. You were renting in what area?
So I was in Longport in Stoke-on-Trent.
Okay, and it was a property that you thought was going to be how described?
So it was described as a luxurious maisonette, 3 bedrooms. It had like a bathroom, separate toilet. It was quite spacious, but upon viewing, I clearly saw that there were several things that needed fixing before I moved in.
But that's normal, isn't it? And these things,
course.
you view a thing, and it's probably had some use, and therefore you want it to repaired, and that's quite normal. And what at that stage you were happy with proceedings? Yes,
I was. Yes, went and viewed the property. It seemed quite nice. It was all right. Wasn't allowed to go upstairs and view upstairs at the time, which seemed a little bit odd to me. But I was already sort of on the complex in a really small sort of flat that had just one room and a kitchen. So I was just happy to get out of a really cramped space, really.
right.
I was like, right, okay, I'll take the property.
Okay.
The rent was decent. I think it was £375 a month, which is quite good for a 3-bed maisonette. So I just took the property.
Okay. And what at what point did alarm bells start to ring?
When I moved in, so I got these, started moving my stuff in. Needed to use a bathroom, went upstairs, and I was like, oh, okay, that explains everything. So upon going upstairs, there was a landing with a skylight, and the carpet was it was covered in green moss and algae and absolutely disgusting. It was damp, it smelled awful.
It was covered in green moss and algae
Yeah,
indoors.
yeah,
You hadn't
indoors.
accidentally found yourself on the roof or something, had you?
I thought
What's
I
going on?
had.
That's
No,
incredible.
it was diabolical. It really was. So, and then I looked up and I was like, oh, that's the problem. So there was a skylight with 2 panes of glass. The top of the roof was the first pane, and that had a giant crack in it. And then so did the second piece, but there was a good gap between the 2 pieces.
We have some images of this, don't we? I
Yeah.
mean, okay. Well, before I show the images, which in themselves are shocking, bear in mind there wasn't a great deal of good light at that point. This was how much time after you moved in? How much time had passed?
This was probably about 4 hours. And I was told on collection of the keys that everything was fine. It was great to move into. All repairs had been done, to discover that nothing had been done. There was no cooker, which was supposed to be an integrated one into the units. Yeah.
There was no cooker?
There was no cooker. There was no boiler at one point. I went from, I think it was August to March the next year with no boiler, no hot water, no heating. I had to live with my granddad. I had to go and stay with my granddad. It was ridiculous.
But hang on a moment, this cannot be right. This cannot be right. I mean, did you go back to the landlord and say...
So I contacted him and I was like, look, I'm not being funny. This isn't on. It needs sorting. I've got no boiler. I've got gas, but no boiler. I've got no heating. I've got no hot water. What am I supposed to do? And he was like, oh, boil the kettle. I was like, okay. I was like, when's it going to get repaired, please? He was like, I don't know. So he was like, there's a handyman that I have access to. I said, so get him in then, please, sort it out. He was like, yeah, no problem. This handyman could apparently do everything. It was gas certified, supposedly, electricity certified. No, it really wasn't. Not at all. It was quite dodgy, and I discovered that about 6 months after moving in. And in the end, I ended up doing all the repairs myself, apart from the boiler. But it was only when housing standards got involved, we had a boiler.
Yeah, but when housing standards got involved, and how I think no, let's have a look at these pictures, these damning images.
Yeah. So
look at that.
That pane of glass there, you can actually, through the gap. So where the gap is there, you can actually see straight up into the second skylight that was there. Both of them were severely damaged, and that explains why I couldn't go and view upstairs. But I was desperate to get out of the 1-bed little property that I was in.
But hang on a moment. Somebody's bound to say, right?
So he basically told me, it was like,
if you moved in hours and you found it like that after hours,
so
why did you stay?
I messaged him and I was like, right, this isn't on. I was like, I was told the repairs would be done. And he was like, yeah, well, don't forget who's doing who a favor here. And I was like, hang on a second, excuse you. He was like, if you want it done, do it yourself. So I repaired it myself.
Hang on, are these verbal conversations or were these texts?
Oh no, these were messages. I did actually send the messages, but because the name was visible in the messages, then obviously they weren't forwarded on.
Look at this.
But
you can't bring up a family in this situation.
No, that's what I discovered after I took the first bit down, and the ceiling actually came down with part of it. But I managed to sort it all myself. I think it cost me like £150 just to fix it all.
Can I ask a question? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to be telepathic, but from your perspective, what part of what was him doing you a favor?
Well, apparently, because I was moving from like a bed sit with a kitchen to this 3-bed maisonette, he was doing me a favor. And I was
Yes,
like,
but it was a bed sit
really
with
not.
a kitchen without poisonous mold to a kitchen to a 3-bedroom with potentially life altering contents.
Yeah. So and basically I just got onto housing standards straight away. I was like, no, this is not acceptable whatsoever.
So how long after?
And
how long after
they came out, viewed all the property?
But how long after you did housing standards view the property?
So I contacted housing standards. They came out about 2 weeks later, which was quite quick.
Right.
Came out, viewed it all, took like literally pictures of everything that was wrong, because that wasn't the only issue. In the main bedroom, there was black mold in the cupboard, full of black mold. The windows were that bad that if the window was open and you opened the bedroom door, you'd hear it whistle. The windows were just terrible. They were falling out. They never got replaced, but that's just a whole different story.
So hang on.
They've now been replaced since I moved.
So hang on a second. Hang on, one second. Housing standards visited the property, saw this panoply of disaster, and then immediately took action.
Immediately. So he had 28 days to do all the repairs. He didn't, so he got a hefty fine, and then got served with 14 extra days to do the repairs. And if he didn't, he'd be taken to court. So I'm assuming he did not want to go to court, because he actually came in, did all the repairs that needed doing, but it was like borderline pass for the repairs. He did the minimal that he could get away with, basically. And then that wasn't too bad. It was all right after that. I had no issues. But then fast forward to 2018, when our son was born, we actually got broken into whilst we were upstairs sleeping, because the door was that bad you could push on it and it'd open. Yeah, I had to get my granddad out to help me change the locks, because the landlord refused to do it, because we got broke into. And we think that the only thing that was taken was the contents of my purse, because we think the baby disturbed whoever it was, because we left the monitor on downstairs. But it was terrible. And then I was like, no, we're not living here anymore. But we just had so many problems living there. I mean, Tiffany knows most of the issues that we had.
I was actually going to move to you, Tiffany. Actually,
yeah.
Tiffany, you actually lived with Allie for a period of time in this, so you witnessed this firsthand, right?
Yeah. I was with Allie. Stayed with Allie for 3 months. About 3 months.
I think it might have been longer than that.
Yeah,
sure
3 4 months. Yeah.
No, I just can imagine that it probably felt like longer. But okay, so sorry, joking aside. But Tiffany, seriously, you witnessed some of this ridiculous scenarios, yes?
Yeah. So it was horrendous. As Ali said, when housing standards got involved, he did the bare minimum, but because there was so much like the mold and stuff like that was so deep into the house, the second he'd done the repairs, it all started growing back again.
Yeah.
So
what happened to the drawers that you had?
Yeah.
In that bedroom.
Yeah, we had to throw a set of our drawers away because they'd been in one of the bedrooms too long, and they'd started to go mouldy. The bathroom was mouldy. The toilet was mouldy. Generally the whole of the upstairs was just full of mold. That then started to come through the ceiling downstairs. There was also issues with the electrical work. There was plug sockets coming off the walls, and obviously in a situation where there was mold in the house as well, moisture, electrics, not fantastic. Yeah, it wasn't good at all. And he continued to do that bare minimum to get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Hamish, it seems to me that this is the mark of what is commonly referred to as a rogue landlord, as what I refer to as a complete scumbag.
Well, the tragedy with this is there should be, and Allie made mention of this fact. She brought in housing standards, and housing standards actually came in, and although there was something done, it wasn't the appropriate amount. I think some of these people, particularly housing standards, different councils, have different challenges. They really have a tremendous amount of work to do. So very often, they won't necessarily follow up instances. I mean, naturally, if you're providing a business service, you would actually say to somebody afterwards, you would say, right, okay, is everything going all right, Allie? Is everything okay now?
Yeah.
And actually come back onto that particular sort of thing. But very often that doesn't necessarily happen. But as we've noticed, there is this time lapse. Allie moves in, significant challenges, takes a fortnight. Then he's given 4 weeks, doesn't get anything. So we're now 6 weeks since the problem's been reported and nothing's been done. Then we get to 8 weeks and then it's superficially repaired. Is this big time lapse? And if people are living in those conditions, they definitely impact on health, mental health, if nothing else. But we all deserve to be able to live somewhere safe, whether it be cladding issues, whether it be mold issues. And we do actually sort of know now, at least they are stricter. I just wonder, Allie, did this gentleman own any other properties as well?
Yeah, he owned the entire block, as well as a couple of other blocks, and apparently he still owns them. And the thing that makes me laugh the most is that about a week after I moved out of this property, everything was done, brand new windows, brand new doors, the lot. The second I moved out, everything was done.
Well, I can only hope that he got something of a bloody nose through this, and that he perhaps learnt some lesson. But I have a dread feeling that very little has changed.
I don't think anything's changed in him.
I think it's disgusting, and if anyone knows of another Cyprus slum landlord, they should be named and shamed somewhere. It's disgusting that this sort of thing is allowed in 2026.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. I can only say it's very brave of you to come on something like this and talk about it, and I thank you for taking the time. Well, no, and Tiffany as well. If she doesn't, okay, don't.
Just dying, it's fine.
Oh, that's fine. It's fine. As long as it's nothing more than just mere death. Tiffany is an excellent human. Any friend of hers, friend of mine. I absolutely admire both of you standing up and making it plain that this thing is still going on in 2026. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, I think it does reinforce it, and this is particularly noticeable in areas of high density where the council is meant to be responsible. Housing standards are meant to be responsible, and they will not necessarily follow up. They don't have time. They also have some people, sadly, and particularly when you look at housing associations too, they are not following through the true way that they are looking at. They're not looking after humanity. They're looking after themselves, and they will get away with the basic issues. And the sad thing is, until the council, particularly until people like housing standards imply the regulations to the full, this will actually continue to happen. And this is one of the good things that should come out of the renters' rights. there should be that improvement in standards.
Right.
We say this an awful lot. There are rogue tenants. I wouldn't actually put down either Allie or Tiffany to be rogue tenants. They have had to tolerate, and it would strike me as an awful lot of other people having to put up with the, if you like, the behaviour of this person who's meant to be a landlord in all of this. And he is just not looking after the individuals concerned. It's basically to him, I want to make money out of this. And when you actually speak to some of the landlords that we know, they're very caring sort of souls, and the last thing that they want to do is to upset their tenants. They do the best they can. What Allie had to go through and what Tiffany had to sort of go through was actually, some of it is absolutely appalling. There's no wonder Allie needed to move out.
I feel ashamed to be a member of the same race as this gentleman because frankly, it's not on. Thank you so much for taking the time out today, Allie.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm sorry Tiff had to go, but I think she was...
Oh, no, it's fine.
But Hamish, and thank you for putting this on. I think this is we have to stand up and explain that this is not acceptable. It cannot be acceptable. People deserve, as a basic human right, that where they live doesn't make them ill. And especially when Allie has done, has brought a young life into this world. It can't be polluting their lungs with mold. Black mold is horrendous for lungs.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, they've now, because I've got a little girl as well, they've now got protracted bacterial bronchitis permanently now because of the damage to the property. They've got health issues because of it permanently. It is.
All right. Well, look, all it says, it remains me to say is to all of you out there, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars. And as I always say, in these troubled times, look after your mental health. Until tomorrow, I'll be on with Hamish again with It's a Kind of Magic. But until then, bye-bye.